Welcome to Andy and Ari On3, your instant reaction show presented by Wendy's. Ari's at the Rose Bowl. It's a 20-point game. Ari, it was a 26-point game when we decided to go live. We're either going to talk about Ohio State pummeling Oregon, or we're going to talk about the greatest comeback of all time, and we're going to have to change the title of this video.
Yeah, well, you know what? We've always wanted to do a live watch party with our viewers. So if it turns into that, then it turns into that, and we'll just call it creative gumption. But like, You're doing me a favor. I'm at the Rose Bowl. I want to go down, talk to the coaches, with the players, write a column for On3. So we're gonna, talk about this because I think that for the most part we have a pretty good idea of what there is to take away from this game. There might be a few garbage time touchdowns here, but I did not think, Andy, coming into this game that we would be going live this early. I didn't think we'd be going live during the game at all. And, I think that it's just funny because, like, it's a reminder that this is just a sport of blowouts. And sometimes teams are playing really well, and sometimes a team gets overwhelmed. And it doesn't matter how good you are, because Oregon is a really good football team. If they played this game again in a week, maybe Oregon would win or be more competitive, but Ohio State just came out, punched him in the mouth, kept punching him in the mouth, and discovered that they might have the best football player on the planet on their team, which is something that they might have been a year. Yeah,
I think they already knew that.
Well, he had 2 targets in the Michigan game, so I don't know how well they knew it. But like, at this point, you're at a place where Ohio State has discovered what it is and who it is, and you can quibble about why did it take this long or what happened in November and all those things. And we'll relitigate that in the future. But if they know that they have a person on their team that cannot be covered, and they have a defense that, I think proved that it's the best defensive unit in the country, like, there is a lot to like about this team and its prospects of winning a national championship. Now, as we said, coming into it, Andy, that there are a lot of good teams with a lot of talent still left in the field, right? Nobody won a national title today, but Ohio State showed that they're probably the best team left at this point. So we'll see.
Became the betting favorite to win the national title today. I believe they went into pluses today. So
they were already into pluses, but it went from like plus 350 to plus 125 in the middle of the game.
Or toward minuses. I mean, not even pluses. Yeah. Gavin Estes in the chat, I want to put your mind at ease. You did not accidentally press pause and leave it there for like 30 minutes. The game is still going on. He says, how far in the game am I behind? Y'all are live so early. The game is still going on, and we just watched Quinshon Judkins rip off a run around the corner. So this is the Ohio State team that was promised in the offseason. This is the one that was advertised. It's not just Jeremiah Smith, who's lived up to every ounce of hyperbole that we've said about him and then surpassed it with this performance today. But it's like Jack Sawyer, who was a good player at Ohio State, had been a very good player, had maybe not lived up to his very lofty recruiting hype,
which was to be Joey Bosa, by the way. Weeks. Yeah, I mean, it was Joey Bosa or Chase Young.
He dominated a Johnny Cornelius today. Dominated him. Just unstoppable. Jack Sawyer has been awesome. Now, he's been awesome for the entire back half of the season. He was awesome in the Michigan game. Like, maybe everybody didn't play great in that game, but he did. So this is going to be very interesting going forward, because if this is the team, if this the roster we were promised, the team we were promised, it is going to be really hard to beat. Their next game, assuming this giant lead holds for the next few minutes, they're going to play Texas and Dallas. It's probably going to be kind of a home game for Texas. I don't think it matters if they play like this and Texas plays like they did today.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I've been like fantasizing about, what question to ask Ryan Day, and I just want to go in there and have the first question and just be like, Ryan, what the fuck?
Why'd you lose to Michigan?
No, just like, what the hell? And again, I think that in the offseason, we're going to have a lot to discuss as it pertains to the value of rivalries and how quickly people can forget them in this new era. Not that it's not important, but now that they're on this run, I don't think that a lot of people are thinking about Michigan as much as they would have been in other years. But it does
This is a change in tone from you.
No, I still think that it is by far the most important, to the people there. But like at the same time, like I don't think people in the Rose Bowl are like Michigan. Like, and if the Michigan game was ever, if they win a national championship, I don't know how people will view the season. Again, we'll talk about that in the future. But I will say this, like Jeremiah Smith is going to get a lot of love. He's going to get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But their defense is awesome, Andy. Their defense is awesome. And I just don't know with the teams that are left in the field without the explosiveness I don't know how they're going to get beaten. Now, again, in November, I don't know how they were going to get beaten, and they got beaten. So I'm not saying it's impossible. But from this standpoint, what we saw tonight from Jack Sawyer playing like a player who didn't want to be defined by the Michigan game, Caleb Downs was all over the field. Ohio State's offensive line held up well. The defensive line, which had no sack in the first Oregon game, was getting home repeatedly. Like they just played the perfect, aggressive, angry football game. And, the ball goes into the end zone. There's been a lot made of like, why do Ohio State fans get so mad at Ryan Day, right? There's a lot of like, why can they have so much success but still hate their coach so much? And I think the reason why is, and even for the lunatic fringe, I'm talking to you too, like, because people know what the sum of its parts are. And I think I'm going to write a column about this, Andy, today. But I sat with Brian Hartline. We joked about how he showed the screenshots of our picks, right? But he asked me in a frank moment, what do you think of the team? What do you think of Ohio State? What do you think of what we've done? And here's what I told him. And it's the same pizza analogy that I've said to you on the show many times. You have the best ingredients, the best cheese, the best toppings, the best crust, the best oven, the best kitchen that any program can have. And so does Georgia, and so does Alabama. But for the most part, in the last 4 and 5 years, when it comes to the teams that have the best ingredients, you have spit out the worst pizza repeatedly. And like, I don't know why. I don't know what's going on there. And this is an opportunity for them to make a really good pizza. So we'll see, what this means. But at this point, like the team from the Michigan game is completely unrecognizable. And like, I've got Michigan fans in my mentions right now going, I have no idea how this team beat that team. Like, it's unsolved mystery shit. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I tweeted earlier in the game, I said, this Oregon team is really good, loaded with future pros, and Ohio State is just crushing them. And the first response is a Tennessee fan going, well, this makes me feel a lot better. And the second response is a Michigan fan going, I have no idea how my team won that game. None.
The SEC just had a major comeback because as it turns out, Tennessee is just the number 3 team in the country. And I just got, I mean, like, because Oregon is really good. And I don't know if they didn't play well or if it was just 2 big pops at the beginning and things kind of got away from them. But like Ohio State targeted Jeremiah Smith on the first 4 plays of the game more than they did in the entire Michigan game. Like Ohio State has found out that they don't have to run the football. Running the football is secondary for this team. And
what's funny is if you target Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka enough, you can run the ball.
Yeah, right.
The box is pretty light.
And it's not. And if you go back and you look at the Michigan box score, it's not just how many times you throw, because I actually think they threw more times in the Michigan game than they did in the Tennessee game. But it's how you throw. It's when you throw. It's the types of throws that you make. It's the shots that you take downfield. And Ohio State attacked the back end of Oregon's secondary the entire game. And if they do that with the players that they have on this team, nobody in college football can cover them, which is what's been so maddening. The standard at this program has always been to live up to what you're made of, and it looks like they're on the verge of doing that. Now, winning the national championship is a lot more complicated and more difficult than it was 2 years ago, but this almost feels like it would have felt had Ohio State finished the job against Georgia 2 years ago.
I got to laugh at this one from David in the chat. No sympathy for the Phil Knight dead ducks. I guess it's true that money can't buy you happiness. No, it's buying Ohio State a lot of happiness, David.
Yeah.
A lot of happiness.
I think, like, I don't know, like, just like for a fact, but Ohio State probably spent more total, right?
I think it's probably a dead heat. But they both spent a lot. But here's what I'll say about Ohio State, and you were talking about this earlier with Ohio State's defense. The behind the quarterback shots in the Tennessee game and in this game, like if you want to know what hell looks like, imagine being a quarterback and seeing so for the Tennessee game, seeing a red jersey on every white jersey, or in this game, seeing a white jersey on every green jersey. Like, there was a shot they showed of a crossing route that Oregon was running, which probably works 99% of the time. And you see Caleb Downs just turn his head and start to move. And Dylan Gabriel was like, oh, crap. And then he just gets pummeled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing that's really difficult about this is that Oregon's concepts work really well. Like, you have Dylan Gabriel rolling out, and in a lot of these plays, you've got one defender who is responsible for containing the run, but also if he bites the run too soon, then you can pop the ball over and throw it to somebody who's streaking across the field. And they scored a few times actually on, concepts like that during the game. And it's like, but when you're playing Utah or you're playing Purdue or somebody else, like, it's not Caleb Downs there. You know what I mean? Like, they are fast, they're dynamic, they're quick. They hit you really, really hard. And it's just a team that, Ohio State, and I think the reason why I'm so tough on them on a year-to-year basis is because we all know that this is what they're capable of. And we don't see this very often. Like, we don't see it during the regular season much at all. It's not like they were an impressive football team that looked dominant at very many points in the season this year. And it's like, I feel like if Ohio State would play 70% as hard and as well as they played in this game, they would have been undefeated this year. And it's like, I don't think it's too much to ask a coach to get 70% of your best. And it's like, what do you think the percentage of Ohio State's best they got in the Michigan game? And I don't know if that's a player thing or a coach thing or a combination of both, but you're defined by what you bring to the table every single weekend. And the thing that Nick Saban was so good at and Kirby Smart is so good at is, even when they have some deficiencies, which they rarely do on their roster, those teams, even with the success that they've had in the recent years and the recent past, always bring it. Like, all the time. And I'm not saying they never have bad games.
Right. We watched Georgia have a bad game. Yeah, we watched Georgia have a bad game this year. But, like, Georgia, that blowout loss to Ole Miss is the first time we've seen that happen to Georgia since, like, Kirby Smart's first season at Georgia.
Yeah.
Nick Saban, it never happened. And that's why when we talk about Alabama this year with Kalen DeBoer, like, the fact that they were so inconsistent up and down and kind of playing up to the level or down to the level of the competition. Like, Nick Saban never allowed that. But that happens for almost every other team. And it's happened for Ohio. It happened to Ohio State under Urban Meyer. I mean, as good as Urban Meyer was at coaching his team up for big games, there was a Purdue game and there was an Iowa game. And it's like, it happened.
And this isn't a recent problem. This isn't even a Ryan Day problem. This is like a 10-year-old problem. Because if you think about the rosters that Ohio State has assembled since they won the national title in 2014, which has been a decade, isn't it kind of crazy that they haven't won another one since? Isn't it kind of crazy that this is the fourth year in a row that they haven't won the Big Ten or beat their rival? Like, it's not like this is the first time they've had a lot of good players. Maybe they have more this year than they usually do. But, it is remarkable that it's been a decade since we were in Dallas covering the last one against Oregon.
Hey, so Ari Ryan has a good question in the chat. What do you think the Texas-Ohio State spread is going to be after today?
Ohio State's going to be laying a touchdown.
Yeah, the look ahead was Ohio State -1.5. I think you're right. I think -6.5, -7.5.
Yeah, it's not going to be 1.5. If it is, then I just like.
I mean, we're gonna find out here in about 5 minutes. But
yeah. I don't know. Maybe it'll be 5.5 or something. I don't know. But like, because Texas is a talented team. Like, they're not. But
Texas didn't inspire confidence today.
I don't think Texas can score on Ohio State's defense, dude.
Yeah. The Arch conversation over the next 8 days is going to be wild.
Dude, before the playoff, and I know we already talked about Texas. We haven't talked about Texas. We talked a lot about Arizona State. So we'll talk about Texas during our show in the morning because we have to catch up on that.
Yes.
My prediction was that Texas would advance to the national championship game, but Arch would start at some point in the playoffs. It's like, look me dead in the eye and tell me that you're sure that Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter against Ohio State next weekend.
I think he will be, but okay. I also think you could have a very similar situation to the Georgia-Texas game in Austin, where if this Ohio State defense is playing the way it has the last 2 games, there may be a moment where Steve Sarkisian has to go, we can't, because like Tennessee does not have a terrible offense. It didn't have a great offense. Oregon did have a great offense. And there was nothing Oregon could do. Nothing. Like, Does Oregon have a better offense than Tennessee? Is Dylan Gabriel probably as good or better quarterback than Quinn Ewers? Yes. I mean, the Texas, I think yes. The answer is yes. So if you get this performance out of the Ohio State defense, Sark's going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, I mean, think about the receivers that were. Evan Stewart got injured in the pregame, right? And didn't
in the
play.
Warm-ups.
So,
yeah, I need a reboot on my Prize Picks play.
So that's a pretty important loss, even though he hasn't really been a huge fixture of projection.
He had a huge game against Ohio State the first time.
But yeah, like I thought Bolden looked good for Texas today. I thought, Gunnar Helm's a weapon, but in terms of sheer firepower, like there's no question this is the most explosive team left in the playoff that Ohio State's going to have to face offensively. So
yeah, I mean, Matthew Golden's been great down the stretch. Gunnar Helm, you know how I feel about him.
Yeah.
So they've got weapons for sure.
Let me switch the gear here a little bit. Because I'm going to write about this and I want to talk through it with you. Ryan Day has been a topic for us, a good one.
A lot, yeah.
And Ohio State fans, a large portion of them, or a loud portion of them, wanted him fired a month ago or 3 weeks ago. And I think that was rational at the time. What is your perception of Ohio State's coach now?
Mine hasn't changed. He's still very successful. No one was going to fire him. The only way anything was going to change is if somebody, he decided to hell with this. But he's gotten a lot better at getting his very good roster ready for big games than he has previously in his time at Ohio State, which, you know what? Is it that shocking? Is it that hard to understand? He's a younger head coach. Like, he's at about the same point in his Ohio State tenure that Kirby Smart was at when he broke through at Georgia. Could it be that he finally figured it out?
It's like, does Ryan Day go from we can't have this guy as our coach anymore to one of the best coaches in Ohio State history in 10 years?
Because remember,
it's possible.
Kirby,
I don't know.
Remember before Kirby won his first national title, what happened 2 games before that? He lost to Nick Saban. You can't beat Nick Saban. He'll never beat Nick Saban. This will never work. He's never going to get it. 1980. And guess what? He figured it out. So maybe Ryan Day has figured it out.
Was that the same season?
It was.
Yeah, the same, like a month later?
It was 2 games later. Yeah. Georgia played Michigan and beat them in the Orange Bowl, and then they played Alabama for the national title and beat them.
Yeah, well, also, too, like, Ryan Day has actually done quite well in the playoff. I mean, when you think about the Clemson win that they had in 21 and the Georgia performance they had in 22, and now this one, like, his record and the way he's had Ohio State playing in this setting has been much better than the way he has been playing in the regular season, which I guess in this new format.
They also beat Clemson in 2020. They closed out Trevor Lawrence's
That's
career.
What I meant.
Like,
yeah. 2020 was the year. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm very interested in the perspective of him now. It's like, I feel like if I were him, I'd just be like, you know what, guys, I'm going to go coach the Patriots now. Like, after all the things that, he's been through, like it must feel really cathartic for him to put together. I'm not even watching the game. Is there anything happening?
I don't think he can get comfortable. I don't think he'll get comfortable because of what he's been through already. But I think that's good for Ohio State because it would be easy after these 2 performances to go, holy cow, we got the best roster. We got this figured out. Chip Kelly's been in his bag. Like he knows how to call this. Jim Knowles is calling the defense amazing. But now all of these guys have been through enough this season to say, you know what? We got when we weren't ready. And we're about to play Texas. And if we beat Texas, some other monster. And we'll get got if we're not ready. So it may be that they've now, and I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say maybe they needed to lose to Michigan. Like that's silly talk. But the experiences that they've accumulated this season probably have taught them they have to be ready all the time. The bad game can come at any given moment. So if they prepare correctly, they can keep that from happening. And I think
throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith downfield. It's not complicated. It really isn't.
Or we learned, Ari, throw it to him short. Just let him cook.
I mean, it's like, I don't know if I'm overstating this, but I feel like I've been around a lot of really good players, especially on this beat for as many years as I was on it. I don't recall a player this special at any position. I mean, I don't know, maybe the Bosa brothers at defensive end, Chase Young. I don't like, from a physically impressive standpoint, like they got 2 more years of this guy.
I know. Well, I've already started to get the tweets because I sent out the tweet today that says, how many NFL teams would Jeremiah Smith be wide receiver 1 on? And I think the answer is probably in the low 20s, half to the low 20s. Yeah, 16 to 20, something like that.
And he's not better than Justin Jefferson. Like, no one's saying that, but like, he is, but like, he will physically be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder. So, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, he'd be the number 1 receiver on the Raiders right now. Like, I don't know if he'd be the number 1 receiver on the Dolphins because they got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but he's that good. And I've already started to get the tweets of, when are they going to change the age rule? Why does he have to play 2 more years in college? So get ready for that discourse.
Well, here's the thing
all off season
is that I hate that discourse because I think it's stupid. Jeremiah Smith is the first player where I would listen to that debate over, because he plays a position that isn't as physical. Like, I don't think
more so than Clowney. It was Clowney was the last one. Was Clowney the last one?
Yeah. But I think the receiver position, with the way his strength and his versatility, I think he could.
Yeah, I think he's actually. It's weird because like, you were talking to him the other day at Media Day, and you sent that video, and you can see his age in his face. He's very young, but he's so physically mature. He could handle it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that's a baby face right there. Like, he's a freshman in college. It's crazy.
Yeah. I thought we were blacking out there for a second. Andy, how about we flip the script here a little bit? We've spent a lot of time this year discussing Dan Lanning being next up in terms of the pantheon of great young coaches. Does your perspective of him change today at all?
Yeah, he didn't get his team ready. But he's also in year 3 as a head coach. It's the same conversation I just had about Ryan Day, and the same conversation I had about Kirby Smart. And like, do you remember how long Nick Saban had been a head coach when he won his first national title?
What, at LSU?
At LSU. So he was in year 4 at LSU. He had been at Michigan State, I believe, for 6 years prior to that. He had 1 year at Toledo.
Yeah. So I thought it was like 12 or something.
Yeah, I mean, and it took Dabo, as good as he was, took a while. His first was in 2016, and he became a head coach in 2008. So I'm not out on Dan Lanning by any stretch. I think the job he did this season, because here's the thing, and I'm glad because social media makes me lose faith in humanity sometimes, but I did not see a lot of Oregon was a fraud, because we saw them all season. No. They weren't a fraud. They beat this team. They beat Penn State. They beat Boise State. Like,
although we need
put
to
together the best resume.
How we give conference champions buys. We need to revisit that after if you don't want blowouts, don't give conference champions buys. I'm joking, Andy. I know you're like trying to communicate. I'm making a joke. They won they got the buy.
I know.
Okay.
There was a comment in the chat saying, is the buy a disadvantage because all the teams with the buy got jumped on? I don't think so, because they got, like, Arizona State got jumped on by the more talented team. Boise State got jumped on by the more talented team. And in this case, Ohio State is just playing better than everybody else right now.
Yeah. And like, Texas is really talented and Georgia's really talented. We'll see. I don't know. Does anybody come close to matching Ohio State's like overall talent? I mean, I guess Georgia does from like with the players who play.
Yeah. Hey, Chris in the chat says the game is still going on, dummies. Really? You don't say, Chris. Not much longer.
There's 21 seconds left. Has anybody ever erased a 20-point lead with 21 seconds left? I mean, it could happen. A point a second.
It would be. And again, I would be happy to change the title, because this would be the greatest video of all time. Just us reacting to, oh my God.
I think some people are finding that we went live early is kind of disrespectful. And if you feel that way, like I understand it. I am at the game. It's like happening behind me, and I'm going down to talk to people to write. So like we're doing this to help ease my day. So like if you want to blame it on me,
it's so Ari has good stuff for his column and for tomorrow morning's show. We now have a final, Chris. The game's over. You happy?
Yeah. We got to stop talking to these people. He's just trying to get a rise out of you. What did I miss? What did I miss, Andy?
I don't think you missed anything. I think we've covered the bases of Ohio State because it's such a fascinating story because what they were when this roster was put together in the summer or in the spring. We were like, oh my God, this team has to win the national title or bust. They then look like a good but mortal team for most of the season. Then they lose to Michigan, and it's like, well, these guys stink. But in the last 2 games, we've seen them look exactly the way we thought they'd look in the offseason. And I think, one, it's proof that football seasons are long, living organisms that evolve. But also, this particular format allows a team to reinvent itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like somebody tweeted at me a column I wrote for The Athletic in 2022, and it was an anti-expansion column, and I want to read a graph to you, and I want to know what you think.
Okay,
but because I just reread it while you were talking, and it says, in the instances when it's not favoring the little guy, all we're doing is giving the Alabamas of the world a second mulligan so they can compete for a national championship in years in which they don't deserve to be in the field. The first team that wins the new college football playoff as a number 6 seed or worse is going to be a super team that was afforded a third chance and got hot at the end of the year. That 2015 Ohio State team that missed the playoff because it lost to Michigan State at home in November didn't deserve to win a national title because it lollygagged all year despite its immense talent. Now we're opening up the back door to incredibly talented teams that weren't great during the regular season and shouldn't be deserved to be celebrated. Isn't that literally what just happened here?
Yeah, and I never had a problem with celebrating those teams. I wanted to see 2015 Ohio State in the playoff because they had the best players.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
I want the best players playing in the playoff.
It is funny to me that there are now 2 teams who have advanced to the college football playoff semifinal. We'll find out. Would Texas have made the 14 field? We got to figure out who would have made the 14 field.
Texas would have. It would have been, I believe, it would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State. I believe that would have been the 14 field.
Penn State.
Those are the top 4 in the CFP rankings.
Okay. So I was going to say 2 teams that have already punched their ticket wouldn't have gone in, but that's not true, I guess, because I didn't think Penn State would have been in. But I guess if that's the rankings, then they would have been. But yeah. So Ohio State's the only team at the moment. No, Notre Dame would have been in, I thought. Like they would have, would they have ranked it differently?
They weren't number 4.
I know, but do you think they would have ranked it differently?
No, because Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, and that counts.
Yeah, you're right. You're
like
right.
Quadruple. So
you're right. Yeah, you're right. So Ohio State is now the national championship favorite, and they are the only team at the moment still alive that wouldn't have been in the field otherwise.
Correct. That's correct. Now we'll find out if Notre Dame beats Georgia, that changes. But if Georgia wins, then it's 3 teams that would have made the 4 team and 1 that wouldn't have. But it came through in the most interesting of ways because, like we said in the morning, it didn't matter what the result was of this game, whether it was a blowout either way was going to be an interesting result. This was a fascinating result.
Well, also, too, we were really wrong. Like, I was telling people all week.
I was way more wrong than you.
Well, yeah. Well, I was telling people all week that this was going to be the best game of the entire playoff. And it turned out to be another blowout. And so I guess we are, how many games are we in now? 7? No, 6 games into the playoff. And all 6 were blowouts except 1. Right?
No, this is 7. There have been 7 games.
7 games and 6 have been blowouts except 1.
Yeah.
And 1 seemed like it was going to be a blowout till Arizona State got their act together.
We've only had 1 team, 1 underdog cover the spread. So now the Georgia Notre Dame game is kind of a pick 'em. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
but
I guess the good news, Andy, is that we don't have another live show tonight, but then it gives us a better show in the morning because we have an extra game tomorrow.
It does.
It's terrible. The reason it got delayed, but from a schedule standpoint, it's easier.
Well, everybody in New Orleans, stay safe tonight, and we're gonna come back at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll break down what Ari learned interviewing the Ohio State folks after this game. We'll talk about Texas and Ohio State. We'll preview the Georgia and Notre Dame game. And just, be safe. We after what happened last night, just, hug your loved ones, be safe. And I'm fascinated by this game, this Georgia Notre Dame game. I think it's really interesting. So we'll get into that. We'll talk more about Ohio State. We do have to talk more about Texas. You're right, because we talked a lot about Arizona State. We do need to play a portion of the Arizona State press conference because I believe Kenny Dillingham is now the first college head coach to ever quote Varsity Blues, to ever quote Billy Bob from Varsity Blues in a press conference. So lots to talk about. Ari, get down, do some interviews. All of you, we will talk to you.
Thank you for being here.
9:30 a.m. Eastern.